We are live on Facebook. Welcome, y'all. Welcome, Drew Edwards.
Yes, we made it. We're
We
here.
made it. Take two. So for those of you that are joining us live or on the replay, this is the Seeds Storyteller Series with my dear new soul brother, Drew Edwards, co-founder of Pangea, based here in the United States and doing a lot of work in Uganda. And we're going to dive into his story in a few minutes. But first, he's going to chat with y'all while I share this video to my Seeds page. So go ahead.
Yeah, how's everybody doing? It's lunchtime there. It's late lunchtime here in Boston. But I just had an egg sandwich. I was very excited about that. I don't know if you can share what you're eating if you are, but I think this is a great time to take a lunch break, probably wherever you're at. So maybe that's where our commonality across time zones.
Yes, I love it. I haven't had lunch. I had a late breakfast.
Okay. Well, that
Okay.
carries.
Okay, keep going, Drew. I'm going to share it to Pangea if I can.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we're just getting going here. Actually, I'm curious. I hate to talk about the weather. No one likes talking about the weather, but I have to say, I've only lived in Boston for a year, and everyone's been telling me that it's not normally like this. It's usually warmer, and I found everywhere I've ever lived that has snow, everyone says that every spring. Today, we're looking for it to break through. It says it's going to be 60 Fahrenheit, but it looks doubtful to me. We'll see.
Oh, well, welcome, y'all. Again, this is, my name is Sarah Davison-Tracy. I'm going to switch our view here. There we go. This is my buddy, dear soul brother, Drew Edwards, co-founder of Pangea, doing some incredible work in Uganda. And for those of you who are new to the Seeds Storyteller Series, just a quick reminder and explanation of what this is. So this is, for me, a chance to share people I know, love, respect, that are about some amazing things in the world that I personally am very inspired by, that I personally find more of how to do what I am doing in the world as I watch them and listen to them do their thing. And that is my hope for you, that as you hear Drew's story, as you hear his why, the people that he loves and is serving in Uganda, and his team here in the United States and around the world, that it'll just plant some seeds of inspired action in your life. And as I call it, some kind of crumbs for the treasure hunt of the journey that I think we're all on. So please lean in, lean forward, be engaged, like, comment, emoji, ask questions, share what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you want to learn more about. And we're doing a brand new thing during this live. So at right about in a half hour, it's 12:30, at 12:30 Mountain Time, we're going to do a Q&A with my buddy Drew. So post your questions and we'll answer them. For those of you that are chiming in after the live during the replay, I will be going through all the comments and passing the questions on to Drew, because our hope is this kind of starts a whole bunch of ripples of conversation and connection with Drew and his team. And we believe that's how life is really amazing, and the change and the difference that we're looking to make happens when we get looped into each other's worlds. So, Drew, thank you for joining us for take two of this broadcast. We did it. He said he was crossing his fingers all day long, morning long, for our glitch to be worked out, which it was. So thank you. So before we dive into Drew's story, we're gonna start with our place of pause, which we often do in our Seeds of Exchange meetings and Facebook Lives, because whether we are on fire with purpose and passion or struggling in life, I believe, or somewhere in between, I believe that taking a breath and finding ways to really fuel our body, our mind, our spirits really is essential for life to be rich and good and kind of moving along in the direction that feels good. So I picked out this morning an excerpt from my book, Live Ablaze. that just leapt out of the book at me. So I hope it was for a reason for one of y'all, or many of y'all, to hear it. This is called Unstoppable. You are destined for more than you can be or do on your own. Individually, you're extraordinary, with great capacity and power. And there's more. When you open your heart and your mind to the people around you, like Drew today, to those in your mighty human family, strangers and friends alike, you will discover possibilities, joy, and strength in surprising places. Humbly and wholeheartedly see and welcome others into your story and invite them to share their own. Together, life is better. Infinitely more is possible. You, we are unstoppable.
Hmm.
So, friends, wherever you are, I just invite you to take that in, to take a breath. Whether that resonates is just totally true and makes you snap and clap, or if you're like, oh my lordy, I don't sense that at all in my life, just take a breath. And I believe with my whole heart that it's true, and I want to fuel that in you and in me and in everyone that I get to work with and be with. And Drew's I asked him if he would share a bit, just a minute or two of a glimpse of, my dog just came up to join our place of pause. This is Maisie. Drew, would you share kind of what it is that kind of fuels you in the midst of this work that you're up to and the busyness of your full life? Like, how do you fuel yourself, and what are the places of pause look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic because it's for a long time I thought, and for a lot of people, I think silence and presence and like meditation can be really impactful, and they can for me as well. But when things get really chaotic and when everything hits the fan, like I've always run in my life, and I think part of that has been I've been able to find a bit of solitude, or just space to think and almost like move with my mind when I need to.
Yeah.
Where I always get energy from it. I never come back. I mean, I'm tired, don't get me wrong, but like, come
Yeah.
back with some type of, whether it's the endorphin kick or something. I mean, there's just something that happens from that. And that's been helpful for me. And last week when we were going to meet, I was going on a few hours of sleep over a few days because we had final examinations, and it was like 4:30 in the morning and the sun started creeping out. Didn't know it started then. And just decided going on a run would be better than trying to get a couple hours of sleep. And it was, and I got through the exam, and then I slept forever. But it was a really good, moment of pause for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you. So for those watching, like, post, what do you do to fuel yourself? Whether it's like going out on a run, going out on a walk, basking in the sun, reading a book, praying, meditating, talking with a friend, just share. Because like I said, I believe we're fueled by each other's stories, and we find a lot of wisdom in that. So we're going to dive right now. This, again, if you're just joining us, is the Seeds Storyteller Series with the amazing Drew Edwards, co-founder of Pangea, doing some incredible work in Uganda. And we're going to start and give a quick overview of what Pangea is up to. And then we're going to pull back the curtain, as I say, and hear a little bit about how Drew came to be doing this work, and what are the passions in his life that kind of led to this moment, to this work that he's so committed to. So Drew, tell us a bit about what Pangea is and why it is so important in the world today.
I love that. I love how you describe that. We feel strongly about what we do. I mean, we're a small organization working in Uganda. We work specifically in the world of education, but we kind of call it community building. One of our former presidents called it nation building.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we try to work on the bedrock and the foundation with communities and schools and outside of them. So we primarily are working in literacy. And we do that kind of through three fundamental ways. One is working in the classroom where kids spend their most concentrated time learning every day. And we only work on literacy instruction. We found that there's a huge deficit of this in schools. And then we also work, and we have these community centers outside of schools. And then we have a publishing company called Pangea Publishing, where we try to publish local language children's books. And we do all of these things because, literacy in the world of education feels kind of like a typical route to go. And a lot of people are fueled by their love of reading. For us, I think it's really important because it's a skill that empowers people to learn how to think for themselves, how to access information for themselves, and how to connect with other people. And we see it as the fundamental underpinning for all other learning, for children to figure out how and who to become, who they want to become. And that's kind of the spirit and the background for what we're all about.
I love that. And as Drew and I were preparing for this conversation, one of the things that Drew had mentioned that he thought would be cool, that I love, was inviting y'all, as you're listening, for those of you that can read, because we understand not everyone that's listening can. So for those of you that can, think back to a moment where you remembered something clicking in your like being able to read, a teacher, a parent, a sibling who helped you learn. How did you learn? And was it hard? Was it easy? And also planting this seed of gratitude, if you can read, for the gift of that. It's a privilege. I believe it's a human right, but I believe it's also a privilege. So kind of as we're talking, just kind of be reflecting on that and see what comes up. But so Drew, so tell us, give us a glimpse, like the pulling back the curtain, so to speak, of a few of the moments, whether way back to your youth or just a couple years ago, of what led you. What are the things that you noticed that have always been important to you, or new passions that kind of fueled your passion for this work and your commitment to this work? Because it costs a lot. It takes a lot. So what is it that fuels it from deep?
I think it's a lot of things. And the thing that we were just talking about, I think education and learning, and education, I mean broadly, I don't just mean schooling, is fundamentally about becoming. And I think that's always been important to me. I think from my own journey, and I think everyone's journey, right? We're all growing and changing in some way every day with every decision we make. So that's always been important to me. There was, when I was in high school and then going into college, I had a dramatic experience as to how we got here, which was that I went to college for one day and said, I don't think I'm going to learn here, and dropped out, and decided that I had heard about this issue in Uganda with a lot of different things, with post kind of conflict reconstruction that was happening with kids that have been affected by this conflict. And that drew me there. And I think it speaks to, there's a quote that I like about this, a Rumi quote that talks about, or that says, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of things you love. And there was something deeply passionate about that for me. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever set out to say, I want to start an education nonprofit. That just sounds exhausting, to be honest. And it is. Yeah. But something about that initial pull and continuing to follow that pull has led me through a process that, that I would say is spiritual, but I think it connects to, it's changed my intellect and how I think about it, right? So we take that fundamental first idea of belonging, and over time that's shifted to something else since then, a larger social justice kind of issue for us.
Yeah. So tell us, give a little glimpse of how that moment where you were in college, that one day, that's an incredible story. And you had this just this epiphany that wasn't the place for you, and it led you on this other path to Uganda and to these people that you now love and are serving and working with. How did the community of Pangea, the other folks that have been either part of the early founding and leadership or currently, how have you found kind of the community of building this work of Pangea to be a part of actually doing the work, like partners and friends and collaborators?
It it only happens with community. I mean, and in the way that I think we're bringing our communities together now, right? And you're hearing about something that I don't expect you to ever have been to Uganda or know anything about it. I think part
Mhm.
of what's wonderful about community in the world is that we hear and we kind of get connected to these passions. So for myself, I had actually met two other people when I decided to go back to university after this. That had been to Uganda at another university and had had the same kind of realization, the same passion, and it
Mhm.
was in community that we decided to kind of we wanted to do something about it. We did not set out to start an organization. We just wanted to go back, and then it turned out that getting money for projects that we were doing made more sense under the umbrella of a 501c3 organization. So I mean, community had kind of been at the foundation of that, but community is what drives what we do and where we go now.
Mm.
And that's kind of been they're kind of directly correlative on
Yeah.
our growth and the more work that we can do, but also on our trajectory with the kind of work we do, because the soul of our work is embodied by everybody being involved, not just the kind of the Drew mind and deciding what's best.
Right. Right. So tell us a little bit for those that haven't been to Uganda. Give us a little, like a day or a moment when you were there recently that, um, I don't know, a glimpse of the story of the people, the community that just pops out in your mind of, um, like, this is what it's like in this community that we're working in, and the people that we're serving and loving. Like, what do they eat? Tell us about the school. Like, just give us a little, paint a picture for us
Yeah,
of the
I, I
community.
I can think of one particular day that it's just moved me, I think, to now. So we work in what are called peri-urban and rural areas, so not really urban areas to
Okay.
areas that are very, very rural. And as a result, there tends to not always be like a ton of infrastructure. Infrastructure is always a problem. It's always going. I mean, it's still rising, and there's incredible schools in Uganda, but the ones we choose to work with tend to struggle with that.
Mhm.
Um, and so one of our schools, St. James Primary School, we used to partner with. They were holding a community event because we were launching a new version of a project, and the school is led by an all-female staff, which is incredibly unique, especially at the
Mm.
administrative level in Uganda. And we partnered with these women, and I say partnered as in like we don't buy everything. I mean, it's not like we're the
Yeah.
benefactors that fund you all. We like the idea of walking alongside, hand in hand, in the same direction, and identifying priorities. And to be honest, we can't we can't fulfill all the needs. And I think it's probably for the better that we can. The idea is working together towards something. And but things in development and aid don't always work that way. Dependencies created sometimes. And one thing that was proud, I mean, we worked together for 6 years at this point, and I remember sitting at a community meeting with the head teacher, a woman named Annette, giving a speech in the church of the school, which was nothing particularly impressive. I mean, and I think what this speaks to for folks in this community is that they've continued to put their children before their immediate needs. So
Yeah.
the church was a bunch of old tin roofs. I mean, like old tin roofs from other people's roofs, while they continued to build nice foundation blocks and buildings for their children. And so we're sitting in this room, and each of our teachers speaks 3 or 4 different languages. I speak like one, maybe two on a good day. And so you have folks that are, directly translating like throughout to different community members from totally different parts of Uganda. And she had said something at one point that was talking about, it isn't on these people, pointing at me, the only white American in the room,
Mm.
to solve the problems we're trying to solve. It's on us. Don't be confused or be misled by that. And that for us, I mean, literacy is the point of this, and we do look at outcomes very academically, and we do a lot of research on the work that we're doing. But
Right.
when you see moments like that, when you feel like you're a community together, and you see that it's
Yeah.
that type of leadership, it's hard to put words to it. It's just
Yep.
something that took me back.
Yeah. Um, so can you, so for those of you that don't know, I've included in the write-up a whole bunch, if you want to go down the Drew and Pangea vortex, as I say, of their website and their Instagram and Facebook pages. I have all those links in the write-up. And if there's anything missing that you want more of, please make sure you add it into the comments, and I'll make sure I get whatever you want to. Yeah. But I've included what we call steps towards inspired action. So for those of you that are like, wow, this is so cool, I want to learn more, I want to be a part of the Pangea world, a couple of things that we'd love to invite you to join us on is this month, our Seeds of Exchange partner is Pangea, fundraising partner is Pangea, and our goal is to raise $2,000 for their teacher training, which is in August, right, Drew?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so it's literally, they've raised the bulk of the funds and they needed $2,000 just to get like over the hump to get all their staff there and the materials and just all the nuts and bolts ready to rock for this teacher training. And it is a tax exempt donation. And we thank you for any donation from $10 to $10,000. We'll celebrate it all. But Drew, can you explain, because I love, for those that don't know about what's happening, like why education is so important, especially, well, all over the world. But I love kind of the passion you have for the way you do your teacher training and really empowering the local leaders. And can you kind of tell us like how that works and how this $2,000 is going to be used on the ground in Uganda in just a couple months?
Yeah, so in our teacher training, it's one of my favorite things that we do because it's investing in people. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing is, you can buy stuff will wear down and depreciate over time. It's how it is. But investing in people, I mean, in terms of anything that's happening in a classroom, the best investment you can ever make is in the teacher. Uganda is the second youngest country in the world, I believe. So it has the largest population of youth, which also means it has the smallest tax base to support education. As a result, the primary teacher college is doing its best, and we've just noticed that they've missed fundamental skills. So one of the things we work through are like, if you ever remember watching Hooked on Phonics, we teach phonics. I mean, we have to walk through some kind of core skills to equip teachers to be able to change they want to make in their classroom, because a lot of teachers are kind of not well prepared by no fault of their own. And teaching is also a profession it's not something that a lot of folks aspire to. It's something that some people fall into. So one of the things that we work on is being able to take that and try to build pride in it, because I think, I mean, what are the greatest impacts you can have on a human being is to be a teacher. So one of the things we focus on, I mean, I won't bore you with the educationese, but it's a year-long program that we work through with folks, because we know that this takes time. It's not going to happen in a conference. And we provide coaching with them along this, how we think about learning. We talk about growth mindset and talk about how, do you think all of your children learn the same way? And we ask them as well, if you have children, are they all the same? So working through and kind of reshaping how we look at this, because a lot of times we tend to replicate what we've experienced in our own childhood. Totally. And that's wonderful. I think it's a great place of empathy to start from. But the thing to remember is that every child is going to be different, and you need to meet them where they're at. And that there's a lot of learning science that we try to add to this, and we should leverage that. So that's like kind of the fun, that's the fundamental, that's the core of it. That's the structure of it. And the one piece I would add is just that coaching piece that I think makes the biggest difference. In a lot of times in US schools, your instructional coach or your observations is your boss, making sure that you're doing your job. For us, it's us coming in as a coach from the outside, as a support figure. Not evaluating you, but we'll model with you what we're talking about or what you learned, and then we'll give you direct feedback. And we've found it's been so exciting for all of the teachers that are participating. They get very proud, and other teachers want to come watch and exchange ideas. And it's that ethos that we're trying to create in schools, so that, each of these teachers, we're going to train over 100 this year. They're going to serve something like 9,000 or something throughout the entirety of their career. Each one of those individual dollars, we're able to train each of them for nickels and pennies, right, pretty close to anything for each child by the time we do this. So it's amazing. Just wonderful. And these are also community leaders. The woman Annette I was talking about, her teaching and leading doesn't end in the classroom. And I think that's one of the biggest, most poignant points of it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Can you tell folks, for those that are like super excited and would love to, the teachers out there that might have some time in the coming years to volunteer and do something in country in Uganda, do I remember correctly that the kind of volunteer slot that you guys are most eager to fill is kind of teacher volunteers to go and
Yeah, no, that's
there. Okay.
exactly it. I mean, because one of the best ways, I mean, what I love about it is we're very critical on volunteering and the way that we want it to be meaningful for both sides. And
Yeah.
orchestrating that it takes a lot of thought. We've spent several years thinking about this program. So, it's not the first time we've run it. We do have an opportunity if anybody on a whim wants to come to Uganda in July, we'll be launching we'll be in the middle of this teacher training process. And we're asking teachers to
Wow.
come with us because I think there's things that we've learned and that teachers in the United States are excellently trained. I mean, just incredible and experts of their craft. We want
Yeah.
to bring that knowledge in well-resourced environments here relatively. I know there can always be more.
Yeah.
We want to bring that into Uganda. And what we love about it is that I think teachers that go there also learn a lot from teachers. And we build a sense of pride within teachers in Uganda because, it's wonderful to do something with a 1-to-1 iPad ratio, in your room, and incredible and a lot of learning science there. But try doing that with 50 or 60 or 70 kids in a room with a tin roof that you can't even speak over when it rains. I mean, there's a different kind of craft that I think we can exchange there. And we think that type of partnership builds confidence in both sides, but emphasizes teachers as the solution, not the problem to education's maladies. And we think it's really a great opportunity to do that. So if you're interested in that, we do have an opportunity. You'd have to get a flight really quick. If you're interested in the longer term stuff, we are always open and we have a base where folks can volunteer for more than 3 months at a time if you want to go
Okay.
for a longer period of time.
Okay.
And that's a way in which we support you to do that volunteering versus, the other one, we have folks come, but we also, hope that folks will contribute to our teacher training by donating as well,
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of two different ways.
That's
But here in the
awesome.
US, you can do more stuff too. So
How long is the trip this summer, the July, like the teacher support that you're the volunteering piece?
right,
How long would that be?
it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks in country.
Okay. During the
Yes,
month of July.
during the month of July. Yeah.
Okay. So the ask to the community is if you know of a teacher that you think there's just even a fraction of a chance that they might be able to join in on this incredibly cool experience, share this video with them, tag them, tell me about it. I can share it with them if you don't have time. Let's what a cool thing that could be. And sometimes last minute is the way to go for these things. So that is amazing. And if you want more information about any of that, just make sure you loop in with me and I'll pass it on to you. The last thing I wanted to make sure that we touched on, Drew, is this. Can you give a glimpse of why it's important and how folks can join in on the Pangea publishing end of things? Because it's such a beautiful storytelling. I love the layers of what y'all have put together with that. So can you share a little bit about it?
Yeah. So and layers is kind of the right way to think about it. I mean, we try to impact the classroom. We try to provide support for parents outside of the classroom. But one of the great challenges we saw in Uganda is, I'd spent at this point, we came up with this idea in 2016, I think. And at that point, I'd been in Uganda for 7 or 8 years, and I've never seen a children's book in anybody's home. And I thought it was the most bizarre thing, right? And I started asking everybody, why don't you have children's book? I asked our teachers, I asked, folks on our staff that have masters in literacy, and everyone at first had said, they cost too much money. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's right, though. They cost twice as much as the newspaper, and men buy the newspaper every day. So it seems like maybe we just don't value them. And it became quite clear really quickly that the content wasn't particularly relevant because most books that are in Uganda and most of the world come from the United States. I mean, almost always. The United States is the largest publishing industry in the world. But one of the things about it that's shocking, and I can send you all a bunch of articles about this, 92% of books, children's books made last year only featured white characters. Of the characters of color that were featured in those other 8%, the majority were about slavery or the civil rights movement. None of these things reflect the reality of children here in the US, but also for children outside of the US. And neither were they even in their language. And we know that these things are really important. So we thought, what a great opportunity on two sides. So we do two things with the same product. There's this theory in literacy learning called mirrors and windows. And so mirrors are this idea that children need to be able to see themselves in text. And think about the book that we were asking you to think about. What was the book you attached on to and loved? I presume you might have been able to see yourself in that text. If not, it could have been the windows theory, which was you were fascinated by a window into another reality that you had no idea about. So we're trying to kind of do two things with this one project.
Wow.
In Uganda, we're trying to make sure teachers and families have access to texts about them, made by them, illustrated by them. So we've done this. We source them from oral folklore. So what's great about this, and this is what I think is a social innovation. I know when we talk about innovation, we always think of technology, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the things is these books use oral folklore. We dictate them, illustrate them. We translate them so they're bilingual as well. But what's great is even if a parent can't read, they know the content of the book because it's a
Yeah.
story that's public knowledge and well known. So they're able to walk through some of the key activities that we try to get parents to do with kids when they're learning how to read. So that's been really
Wow.
impactful for us. But we also decided the statistic 92%, don't reflect I mean, it just doesn't reflect the proportion in the United States, let alone the rest of the world.
Yeah.
How can we learn about other places if they're not from their voices? So we decided to start bringing these books here, and we sell them here in the United States as a really unique window into a culture that we have to presume most people won't know a lot about. So
Yeah.
we do a couple things. We sell them. You can subscribe if you want to get one every quarter. You can buy a one-off book on our website under Pangea Publishing at pangeaeducation.org. But we're trying to get them in schools as well. So we build teachers' guides around these to help parents and teachers figure out how to navigate a totally different world that they may not know a lot about. So we just think the world is unbelievably connected.
Yeah.
And it brings me to another quote that I'd love to, this is kind of how I've said that perspective has shifted. But it's a quote from an activist in South Africa named Lila Watson. She says, "If you come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And what I love about that is that, we at Pangea, we deeply believe the world is highly connected. So having mirrors in communities like Uganda where children can learn to read stories about themselves is as important as building empathy and compassion and understanding about the rest of the world here in the United States.
Yeah.
And so I think it's funny that one product can have such a big impact, but we've seen a lot of impact from it so far, but we're just at the beginning of it.
And I'll drop in, I don't think I have a link to Pangea Publishing. It is on their website, but I'll drop a direct link into the write up. And I mean, what a cool thing, like birthday presents for kids, for grandkids, to get a beautiful book every quarter would be amazing. I would personally love that, actually. So if there's anyone, I so believe in the power of us sharing these stories. So if the Pangea Publishing and this beautiful storytelling endeavor that is so full of dignity and beauty and connection makes you think of someone, will you share this video with them and make sure you include the link to the Pangea Publishing part? Because we need each other to share. There's a lot of bad stories in the world, so let's start sharing the good ones, So before we get, in a few minutes, we're going to hop over to some Q&A. So if you have, for those that are on the live, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. But before we get to that, for those that need to peel off here in the next couple minutes, we want to make sure that we just take a moment, take a beat to really remind and invite you to find one piece of Drew's story, a story he told that excited you, that troubled you, that captivated you in some way, and find one act you can do around it, a new way you want to think, a new commitment to explore the website, a commitment to give what you can to this fundraiser this month with us, and that link is in the write-up. Something you learned that you don't want to forget. And if you're on the live or on the replay, even, like, drop it in the comments. We love to see the ripples of that inspired action in you and in one another, and an invitation for you to share it with a live person, later today at coffee or at dinner tonight, just because we believe that when we speak the stories that are captivating our hearts and our minds attention to each other, you can be inspiring them, but then they can also remind you. We need to be reminded so often of the sparks, of the moments of aha and epiphany, because everyday life can kind of encroach on that. So I just believe we get to be witnesses to each other's beautiful stories and learning. So please do that. And again, for those that need to hop off, I just want to remind you that one of the jams of mine and of Seeds of Exchange is to not let one of these meetings and lives pass without reminding you that you're loved, that we belong to each other, and that when we believe that we're loved and we belong to each other, we begin to stand tall and we light up the world. So the last thing I want to leave with in terms of invitation for y'all is we also get that amidst these beautiful stories of education and empowerment, life can be hard for a lot of people. And maybe you hopped on because you needed a little nudge to share what's hard in your life. And if you don't want to share it in the comments, please private message me and I will commit to connect with you, to hold you in love and prayer and companionship, because that's also the reality of seasons of all of our stories. So if you're here, it's no accident. And maybe that's why you're here. So Drew, I'm going to check our comments here on our live and just see what questions have popped up for folks. But as I do, will you talk a little bit about a part of what's coming in Pangea, or what's happening in Pangea right now that is most exciting to you? Because I know you have so much passion in your life, but what's one thing that you just like wake up just like, I can't wait to work on this more, to build this out, or to share this part with more people? What would that be?
Oh man, there's so to choose one would
To
be
choose one.
hard. I think, well, so one of the things that we're really trying to do differently is we're trying to do charity differently. And one of the things that I think the charitable model isn't particularly sustainable, and we're not totally self-sustaining yet. But this year we've had a major breakthrough in book sales in Uganda. So 2 large NGOs, folks like the United Nations Save the Children, to schools, to the Ministry of Education. And that's been really exciting. And that's something we're trying to continue to expand. We're not quite there yet. But what I would love, and what I think is a replicable model for a lot of the world that faces these same challenges in education, is to have money be locally generated, and to allow, we'd love the idea of, our Ugandan organization being entirely Ugandan run and being entirely Ugandan funded. That's kind of the goal. That's where we're trying to move. We're trying to kind of scheme and strategize our business model closer, and we really hope that we make a breakthrough there.
That's awesome. So was there like a moment when you were a kid? I have a 10-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, and I love looking at the things that are capturing their attention now. Like, was there a moment when you were a kid that you look back on and you're like, wow, that's when the seeds of either connecting with other cultures or reading or learning, like what,
Right.
I don't know, how far back do you see those seeds or those threads of interest in your life?
I mean, I feel like I have to credit my mother just after Mother's Day and my father for being wonderful examples of service. I think I got really involved in church when I was in high school, and we had volunteered after Hurricane Katrina with a lot of just the cleanup, the rubble,
Yeah.
and nothing particularly sophisticated. It was just that it was everywhere and needed to be picked up.
Yeah.
And that was a profound moment to me. And that's what caused me to drop out of school, was that I remember sitting and looking and learning that this isn't how society or the world's supposed to work. I can't believe, I remember speaking with a woman. We were picking up a bunch of stuff in her house, and she was living in a tent just outside of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, I think. And I remember saying, like, well, so how does this work then? Like, does insurance come and do they start building your house again? And she's like, well, insurance won't cover it. And I didn't understand that there were these loopholes, and that,
Wow.
insurance didn't mean that it would make everything okay, that, we have great systems of inequality that exist in the world, and structures that don't always, they're not always up to scratch, and because
Yep.
the world's complicated. And I think it was that time that I started realizing that, the wonderful community I had grown up in was a bit of an anomaly, and still has its own problems. I can see now more and more the older I get, but learning that these things don't have to be this way, and there's ways with which, when we come together as communities and we live together as communities, we're able to do so much more and live and be and belong in a way that we ought to belong. So that was in the back of my mind. I remember, and I learned more in that moment than I thought I was going to learn freshman year of college, which is why I thought I'd just go learn more about stuff through similar circumstances.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I want to, before we, I don't see any questions in the chat. So before we wrap up, I wanted to focus on one of the responses that you had to one of the questions I had for as we prepared for our call.
Yeah.
I asked you, Drew, what are 3 words that give you hope? And you said hope, courage, and resilience. So could you tease each of those out, and if there's even a story of like a moment where you were low on hope and hope kind of came in and gave you an infusion of, hope, courage, resilience. Can you tell us like a little story or a why for each of those 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that's listening probably feels this. I mean, like, life is just full of, I think we get rejected from 90% of the grants that we apply to. It's challenging, and I
Yep.
so what I love about each of those words is that, hope is important. I think maintaining hope, and I would say even underpinning hope, I would probably say gratitude is being hopeful. But I think each of these lean into each other, right? I mean, to be hopeful is fine, but I don't think it's enough. Do something, whether it's in the self-efficacy, if it's just on a small portion of your life or someone you love's life. I mean, doing and being and actively engaged with it takes hope and doesn't let it ever become latent or stale, but it moves it, it transforms it. And it's really hard and scary, right? I mean, and I think it's within those moments of courage, like every time we put out an application, every time we try to hold a fundraiser, every time we try to launch a project, we know there's a pretty decent chance something's going to go wrong, or it's going to get rejected completely.
Yeah.
And I think, when we talk about resilience, it's the ability to be able to have courage and get up and keep trying time after time after time again. And to be honest, I think the stories that come to mind, I just think of the folks that we serve. I mean, and every parent, it's just so fitting, right? I mean, I don't have kids yet, and I remember that ever since I've been working in education, it's just been, you will never find a parent who won't go to the ends of the earth for their child to do everything that they possibly can to give them the chance, the opportunity to be who they have been born to be, who they ought to become. And that to me is the definition of resilience. It's the definition of courage, and it's the definition of hope. And that inspires me every day. It's just incredible. I can tell you a more illustrative story if you'd like. I mean, one of the things is I used to bike to one of our schools. I taught for 9 months in one of our schools because I really wanted to learn what that was like. And I had to bike 21 miles each way every day. And I thought I was doing the most hardcore thing in the world because we couldn't afford gas money. And so, we did this every day. And I was a college athlete. I thought I was like, if anyone can do it, I can do it. So I thought, there's like a sense of ego and superiority there. And I remember hauling on my bike. And one day, one of the teachers at our school went by on this 50-pound steel bicycle in a full suit and passed me on the way to school. And I ended up seeing him a couple weeks later, and he turns out to be our next door neighbor. And I remember thinking this is incredible. I was complaining about this every day, thinking that I was doing the hardest thing in the world. And this person did this barely sweating in a full suit every day, just to get to his job, which is changing lives casually, but it was just that type of effort that I think, I think we all have to live in a tremendous amount of courage every single day. And I don't think anything I was doing or what we're doing is particularly profound. It's just that we all have to live in the profound. And that's the only way anything's going to happen or change and life's going to get on.
Wow. I love that. Thank you.
If that makes
sense. It entirely makes sense. And I think we're going to end with that story because again, I want to loop back to y'all that are watching, and um, whether those 3 words just fill you with fuel and you're already like going, at Mach speed and you're just rocking it on top of the world. I hope that those, the invitation to continue to be courageous, to continue to be resilient, and to continue to be fueled with hope and gratitude, just like, fires you up. And if you're low, um, and life is hard, I hope that something in that, um, not just the words, but the wisdom and the spirit of this amazing brother of ours, Drew, encourages you and speaks to you and inspires you and just gives you a little fuel for your day. So I just want to say thank you, Drew, for who you are, for what you're doing, for the way you show up and live life. It's a gift to me and to the world. And I wish you just continued health and joy and success and all the good stuff that you bring tenfold, hundredfold back.
Well, thank you so much. But also thank
Yeah,
you for having me. Thank you for the community that
you're
you're building and
welcome.
cultivating, because it's inspiring to see folks that are trying to do this. I mean, there's so many other important causes in the world, and in ways
I
that
know.
people live even in their daily life. And I just think it's awesome that y'all are doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's like one of the things I think about so much is this prismatic beauty of a community where people, it's not about all of us doing the same thing, because that wouldn't be enough. Like, we got to be all about different things. So I
Awesome.
think it's part of like the prism. So
Mm.
thank you. Thanks, y'all, for joining live or on the replay. And please stay connected. Please loop in and join in some way, whether it's sharing with some peeps that you think would be interested, or yourself donating, or, hopping on a plane in July and going to Uganda. It's possible for some people. If that's you, don't miss the chance. And let's just stay looped in. So blessings to y'all. And until next time, we'll see you later. Signing off.